Now, when I think about the lab notebook, there are few aspects more important than the font that you choose. Now, let's begin by going over some broad classifications and a brief history of fonts. Now, the first fonts are designed in Germany, and they're meant to emulate the human writing that had been used to write books for hundreds of years previously. Now we categorize these types of fonts as black letter. You may have seen them in German restaurants, those big, thick letters commanding deep authority, but then we move into a new era of fonts where we develop the old style serif font. Now, the old style serif font was an important departure from the German black letter fonts of the earlier period. Now, the old style serif is where we start to develop some of the letter forms that we know today. Then we move into the transitional serif, then the modern serif. Now, another modern typeface family you might be, okay, it's not a family. Another modern typeface classification you might be a little familiar with is the sans-serif typeface classification. These include letters without the little triangular feet on them, which we call serifs. Now, if the feet are pointy, we call them Latin serifs. If the feet are square, we call them slabs or Egyptian serifs. Now, there are some other genres of type too, such as display type or script type, and as we mentioned earlier, also our world famous black letter. Now, you might be asking, how do we know exactly how big our type is? Well, my friends, I have an answer for you. Some of the largest or most commonly used measures in the printing trades are points and picas. Now, there are 6 picas in an inch, and there are 12 points in a pica, so that's 72 points in an inch. And when we talk about the point size of font, we are talking about the vertical height of the slug, that is the metal piece that the letter was originally affixed to back in the day when we used to create documents using movable metal type. And so again, blah blah blah, I'm spitballing here. I'll edit this into a masterpiece. Fonts. Now, of course, we have a few different methods of laying type out. Now, originally, you're probably familiar with Johannes Gutenberg and his world-famous printing press. He was not the first to use movable type. He was not the first to use movable type, but he was the first to do so in metal and the first to do so for the Western world. The Chinese had been using wood characters earlier, but he revolutionized the printing industry by making books more accessible and cheaper. Now, fast forward a few hundred years later, the issue with Johannes Gutenberg's system is it's very expensive and time-consuming to sit there and pick out all the individual letters for the word you're trying to spell, print your paper, put them all back, and do it all over again for every single page in your book. So, eventually someone came up with the monotype hot metal compositing system. Now, what the monotype system allowed you to do is take an entire font, put it in a case, put it on top of a machine, type out what you wanted your line of text to say, and it would cast the type in hot metal. These could then be composed onto a larger composing board, and then this entire assembly could be inked and therefore printed. And then we also developed the monotype system, which cast individual letters instead of entire lines. Then comes the advent of phototypesetting, and phototypesetting is very important because it allows us to store entire fonts on sheets of paper rather than gigantic metal magazines. Then, of course, we have the advent of digital typesetting and digital layout, which is what many of our teams will be using today.